We want people to be collaborative. We want people to be comfortable and knowing that we're going to get through it together and we're going to work through it together. We're going to go back through and say, okay, what could we have done different? And just moving forward. It's not focusing on the mistake, it's focusing on the path forward.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Relocation Leader. I'm your host, Zach Turbis, and today we have a very special episode. I know I say that all the time, but this is one you don't want to miss. We have Jaymi Stacy in the house, and she is the Senior Director of Expense Disbursement Services. Yeah. Do you want to explain to everyone why you have such a crazy title?
Yes. So I oversee our expense tracking department. And we, in our department, we're what helps oversee the expense process from the moment the transferee enters in their reimbursements all the way through to their payroll calculations for our client payrolls. So we oversee the entire disbursement. It's not just the administration of it. It's from point A to point Z. For my team's roles, like I said, we're broken into administrators, auditors, and then we also have a household goods team that helps us along the whole process. So we're overseeing everything.
So you guys don't have the most visible role at NEI, but could you kind of give a little bit of an overview as to why you're so needed though?
Yes, absolutely. So we may not be the most visible, but we are the ones that people rely on the most as we're reimbursing the reimbursements of the transferee. So we're handling their payments, their money, and everyone wants to get paid. So it's very important. What our team also does, though, is that we're trying to make sure that we're also being compliant. So we're reconciling the reimbursements against our policies, our procedures that we have for each client, and ensuring that those reimbursements match and that we're paying out exactly what transferees are qualified for and nothing that they haven't qualified for. So we're kind of that middleman of being able to keep our clients and helping them stay compliant with their own policies, as well as helping transferees get the reimbursements that they deserve and a lot of times really need.
You entered into the relocation industry 2.5 years ago. What have you learned, and what would you tell people about relocation that they should know? That before I got into relocation, I didn't even know this industry existed, and now I recognize how beneficial it is for all the people who get to benefit from these services.
Absolutely. So, and not knowing that I had resources out there to help with that. What I would say about relocation and the way it benefits is it helps our clients and it helps our clients' industries to pick the best and brightest individuals. It offers them the ability to say, we really like this candidate. This is the one we want. Let's offer them this so we can get them to where they need to be. It's putting the right people in the right seats and using, NEI as that guiding force to help them through. It's helping our transferees not have to deal with something that's so stressful. Mm-hmm. One of the most stressful things that people can go through is taxes and moving. Mm-hmm. So everyone, whether you've moved down the street or moved across country, it's stressful. Having someone there to guide you along the way through the whole process can take a lot of that stress and ease the mind. So it's incredibly beneficial for clients to use those resources that they have and using RMCs to help out with that. You have knowledgeable individuals who have been in the industry 20 plus years and that can relate and say, yeah, I remember when I moved, this is how stressful it was. Let's get this taken care of for you. It's having that person that you can call on the phone and talk, and tell them your concerns and your fears. They have someone that they can go to, and not just for the candidate and the transferee, for their families, to have someone that they can go to and talk to and be part of the process as a whole. It's really makes it so that everyone feels comfortable with the whole process.
Could you explain a little bit about kind of your path getting to NEI and then, kind of why you chose NEI, why you're still here?
Absolutely. So I come from a background of consulting. I was a consultant. I helped with IRS compliances as well as helping companies grow from a small to medium-sized company and the softwares that come with that. So I was traveling all the time. 3 weeks out of the month, I was gone and I wasn't at home, and I wanted to be home. NEI had an offering of stability, which was something I was looking for at this point in my life, was to be stable and a place where I could grow. I've stayed with NEI because it has allowed me growth. It has allowed me to grow in an area that I never thought I would. It's ignited passions that I never thought I had. And it's not only helped me lead more in my professional growth, but as my personal growth as well. It's challenged me to become a better leader, better manager, and as well as a more proficient leader.
Nice. And so you told me earlier about all the degrees you had. Can you explain some of those? And they're really interesting.
Yes, so I do have several degrees, and I'm continuing to work on a couple more. I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I had gotten my degree. My first degree was like in math and history and science, kind of a generalized degree. My second degree went more into the accounting realm because I enjoyed accounting. I loved the tax services and items like that. It was something I really enjoyed.
Yeah, you don't hear that every day.
It's the puzzles. I like the puzzles behind it.
Yeah.
And then I went more into a industrial and organizational path, and I loved the psychology. And it kind of, most people don't think about it, but there is actually a really close tie between accounting and numbers and human resources and organizational psychology. They both help with how do we grow, not just as with our monetary capital, but with our human capital as well, because both parts are incredibly important. And I would say our human capital is our most important asset that we have.
Tell me more about that.
So human capital would be our employees,
Yeah.
the people that work for us. Their expertise, their knowledge is what drives us forward. Without them, no company can do anything. It's your on-the-ground workers who are helping you every day. And so organizational psychology is how do we build upon that, and how do we help people grow, not just in their positions, but as people as well. Because when people are whole and they're healthy and they're happy, then that's where we see efficiencies. You have to be happy with what you're doing in order to be strategic in your thinking and to have those skill sets that you need to move forward. So using psychology and using organizational psychology and things like DISC or predictive index helps managers and leaders be able to help their team members become their best selves.
And so is that what you were doing when you were consulting, is coming into organizations and helping them figure out their own, culture and how to optimize their people?
Absolutely. So a lot of the companies I worked with started out as mom and pop shops or a one-man operation, and now they've grown so much that they are out of control. They don't have an HR department. They don't have an accounting department. They don't have all these things that they now need because they've moved on to the next step in their corporation's growth. So what my team did is we went in and we helped them figure out, what payroll software do you need? What accounting software will work best for your business? What policies, procedures, and cultures are you looking for to build out of this company? And what areas do we need to help you grow in because you're not following these compliances? And what new compliances are you now having to follow because you've grown from this below 50 to this above 50 and those thresholds that need to be accounted for?
So this is my favorite part. So everything that we talked about with your consulting, how has that helped you in your current role? Like, what does your department do, and how have you used your background in consulting to kind of help your own department here?
Absolutely. So the way I've used my skills and my background is creating the efficiencies, building our efficiencies, and building collaboration. So the expense department, when I came on, was very niche in its own market and very individualistic. You had your group of clients, you had your expertise, and you were the person for it. When I came in, and not just me, the director below me, Christy Pierce, has been outstanding in creating this dynamic as well, of moving from an individual contributor type department to a team contributor department and being collaborative and growing. So we took away that individual market. We installed managers, and those managers have teams of admins and auditors based on the clients. And our teams learn each other's clients. There's still that person who's the designated expert, but now we have 4 or 5 that can be close to an expert on them as well and can be there and help out. And doing that has increased our efficiencies. We increased our turn time or decreased our turn times 60% in the last 2 years. And for our international turn times, we've actually decreased them almost 75% in the last 2 years.
Just with that one change where we're bringing the team model into your operations or how you're working through those?
I would say that was a big part of the change, but we also made other efficiencies too, how we do process, removing redundant processes that were not necessary anymore, and just making sure we were a well-oiled machine. Also increasing our collaboration with our other departments. Like I kind of said in the beginning, we have our ops teams. We have to work with our ops teams in order to be efficient on our side. We have to have that communication back and forth. And Chrissy was the first step in that. She came from the operations team. So she helped create that bridge. And then when I came on, I have a high accounting background, so I helped create the bridge between accounting. We're kind of the middleman in between ops and accounting. So it was important for us to have that collaboration and build those bridges so that we could be more efficient as a company as a whole.
What kind of hurdles did you have to overcome in creating those bridges?
There was mindsets, really, was a lot of the bridges we had to overcome. It was, well, ET does their thing, and ops does their thing, and accounting does their thing. And it was segmented. And it was building those relationships slowly. We had to start at the higher levels. We had to build those communication styles with other directors. Christy having the relationship with ops was a huge step. When our accounting team, me being able to build a relationship with them as well, helped cycle that downward to where we expected communications. We told our teams, you need to communicate with this person. And on the other side, ops saying, hey, we need to communicate here. We had to turn that, though, as being more of we're not asking or we're not, unsure of what we're doing, but we have to have the communication of saying, hey, this was not in compliance of the policy. We need to send this back out because we either need an exception or the transferee needs to provide something so that it is in compliance and we can move forward in the process. But if we don't have that communication and we don't have that follow through, then that's where things start to break down. If we say, oh, we need a receipt, but we don't reach out to ops and say, hey, I need a receipt, then we're delaying our process. So it's making sure that we have that understanding together.
Now, with Chrissy moving over from ops, was that a sort of like a lucky accident, or was that intentional to be able to kind of create those bridges?
So that was intentional. Chrissy was gunning for it. She wanted to be on the ET team. She wanted to see how we could build those bridges together. So she came up. She moved up to the expense tracking department about 6 months before I came on to NEI. And when I started out at NEI, I actually started out in our satellite Tabor office, and I was brought on as an expense manager and helped that team. We were able to build that up a little bit where it grew very fast. We had no one on January 2022 to the Tabor team being full house. So it was, very needed to have someone there. A satellite location needs to have a manager to be able to have people to go to. Also helped really well that Randy, from Tabor, was able to be there a lot. So that kind of helped ease things. One of my first questions I actually asked when I applied was, what's my access to my senior leadership? And when the HR representative at the time told me, hey, I'm sitting right next to the CEO, I was like, awesome. That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's access right there.
Yes.
And was what really attracted me to NEI to begin with. But starting out at our Tabor team, the position opened up for the senior director position. And I reached out and I was like, I want this. I want to do this. I have the skill sets I think that's needed. And I have the ability to help grow in a direction. But also NEI has an ability to help me grow in a direction that I want to go as well. Thankfully, Michelle and Randy agreed, and I moved to the Omaha office.
Nice.
So
I'm curious when you're flying, because not everyone's going to be in like expense tracking, but lots of people have the experience of coming into a department and trying to assess what the needs are. How do you analyze that? And then how do you take action?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I took part of was our payroll processes. I have a very big background in payrolls. That's kind of where my expertise was, and in tax payroll accounting. So that's what I brought over. And the first thing I did was review some of our payroll processes and go, what are we doing? It was, let's build on this. Let's create efficiencies here. Do we still need to be able to do the report this way, or is there a faster way to do it? Teaching people how to use Excel and how to use Excel as a double check for you. Quickly being able to calculate those gross ups and making sure that they balance and they align by using Excel formulas. That was a big way that we created it. Creating the structure of, let's build out all of our clients, what payroll processes they have, when are these payrolls due, and tracking along the way. Another big thing that we implemented was the reconciliation process. A lot of our clients was like, oh, let's reconcile once a year. Through statistics and studying and stuff, we know that more frequent type of reconciliations are more beneficial. We're spending less time at year end catching things that we could have caught earlier in the year. So that's where I kind of started with it, and then it just kind of trickled down from there. Christy's expertise in efficiencies as well, and knowing our system very, really well, since she's been with NEI for 18 years, she had the system stuff down and was like, how can we create efficiencies in our system to make it better? So together, we were able to take our strengths and figure out where we could create the efficiencies.
Nice. So you kind of flew in there and you're like, this is my bread and butter, and this is a very important part of the puzzle. Let's tackle this first. And then, were there things that you sort of put off and you said, we're not going to handle this right now because of X, Y, and Z? What were the reasons, why, what was your mindset?
So for me, the payroll was something very important. It was something that we needed to make sure we had done well, because it's not just client compliancy. There's IRS regulations, there's government regulations that we have to abide by, and to make sure that we are being the right resource for our clients and helping guide them to make sure that they are being compliant for themselves. And so that was something I was really passionate about, making sure that we were all aligned in the way we did things, creating a standardized reconciliation process, because creating a standardized way that we handle our payrolls so that everyone can help out and jump in. Things that, we'd put off, Chrissy actually handled a lot of those. So efficiencies in our administrators and the way they were processing and how we did our workflow. That's where she really focused on those processes with creating new systems and being able to say, hey, this is what we had done. How can we do it better moving forward? And then also working with the team. I had to get the technical stuff out of the way. Now it's building up our team and helping them become more efficient, creating trainings that are specialized to expense tracking, but also not exclusive to expense tracking, creating a critical and creative thinking training so that we can know that we can think outside the box. Owning our mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. That's perfectly fine. We all make mistakes, but we need to own the mistake. We need to see what were the steps that led to this mistake, where can we make the adjustments, and how do we move forward? It's acknowledging that there was an error. Now let's fix it, and let's move on to make sure we don't do that error ever again. And I think that was a big part of the team too, was saying, hey, if you're making a lot of mistakes, we're going to have a, conversation, but you can own your mistake, and it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. We can work through it together. That's what you have your managers for. That's what you have Christy for. That's what you have me for, is that we can work through these processes together, and allowing the team to say, hey, I'm doing this process. I don't think it makes sense. Can we look at it together and see if there's something better we can do? Love that. Absolutely. Yes. Come to my office and say, this process doesn't work. I don't know why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And then we can go and look at it and say, oh, well, we're doing it this way because X, Y, Z, or you know what, you're right. Let's improve our steps.
And you don't want to create a culture where people are afraid to speak up, about something that happened.
Absolutely. We want people to be collaborative. We want people to be comfortable and knowing that we're going to get through it together and we're going to work through it together. We're going to go back through and say, okay, what was our first steps that led this way? Oh, we see that this step here is what kind of took us down the wrong path. What could we have done different on this way? And just moving forward. It's not focusing on the mistake. It's focusing on the path forward.
There's solutions, there's processes, there's the X's and O's of what we're doing, but then there's also the people that are playing the game,
Absolutely.
I was wondering if maybe you can speak to how we're managing people and kind of like the gains that we've made here with your team, where that's concerned.
Absolutely. So NEI uses a DISC profile. We also use the predictive index. That helps us get the insight into our people and how we can manage them better. Using myself as an example, my predictive index type is individualist. I am a free thinker. I am an outside of the box thinker. I am not always a rule follower, and I'm very comfortable with risk. So those were things that have helped me in my career, being like calculated risk, I should say. Yeah. Calculated risk, but very like how I've been able to grow. Being able to help our people grow is understanding their personality styles. You have to manage the person, but you have to be conscious of the team. But on the individual level, that's where you help someone grow and say, hey, here are some traits and behaviors that you have. Here are areas that we can do self-improvement on. Here where you excel, let's focus on that where you excel and build those strengths up. But let's also look at those areas where we may not have the best. For me personally, it's attention to the details and the process follow through. I'm a big picture person, and I can see the end game, and I don't always think about how I'm going to get there, but we're going to get there. And it's knowing that that's a weakness of mine, and I need to be like, oh, how do we implement it to get there?
And pairing people together, who maybe can, they're strong in areas where you're weak.
Absolutely. It's being able to balance that. Chrissy and I's personalities are very on that. She is very detail oriented and what are the steps that we're going to take, the baby steps along the way. And I'm, there's the end game. Let's get to it. And
Stacy's the cowboy.
Yeah.
Or cowgirl.
Yeah. Definitely just getting out there. But I do, it's something I've worked on and I've had to build with my team, but also working with the teams on the individual level of, hey, this is your strengths. This is how I, as a manager, need to approach you. Some people, you can have that honest, brutally honest conversation, and that's what they need, and that's how they need to grow. Others, you need to be delicate in the situation and look at it as a whole and say, okay, how can we do this better? You never want to make a team member feel like they're wrong or that they aren't doing well. You want to be able to help them grow in the areas that they need to grow in, while acknowledging the areas that they need to grow in. So it's building at that individual level first, and then how does that affect the team as a whole? So you have to have your standards, you have to have your metrics. That's important. But how do you get the individual to be able to match that? For those who maybe aren't as versed in DISC or predictive index, maybe we'll just start with DISC. Can you explain sort of just, in general, kind of what it is, what all the elements are, and how organizations can appropriately use those indexes, right? Yeah, so DISC, there's many DISC profiles out there, and there's different DISC types. So some of them you'll see it's dominance, influential, steady, and clarity. Others, it's always dominance. Dominance, influential, strategic, and conscientious. So it means the same thing, but different words for it. Yeah. So your dominance profiles, those are your people who are go-getters. They're the ones that see an objective, they're going to get it done. They sometimes also forget about the path to getting there, but they're generally seen as, your go-getters. Your influentials, those are going to be your people that are helping inspire the lead, as the leader. They're getting you to a better place. Being conscientious, you're thinking about your company. You're thinking about the big picture as a whole and how each of the little things affect everything. And then you have your strategic, your stability, your supports. Those are your people who are very people-oriented, and they are making sure that people as a whole are good, and they're very at the individual level of saying, what makes you happy? You need all four of those personality types to make a company successful. You need that driving force. You need the inspirational person that can articulate the words of that driving force. You need the person who's going, wait, how's this going to affect this area? You need that And you also need that support. You need those people that are going to be there, and that's what they're there for, is to help grow individuals. And everybody has a little bit of each of those personalities in them. It's how you utilize it at that time. Mm-hmm. Some of them may be more energy expelling. If you are someone who is very high in dominance, but very low in the S, the support stability, and you have to use that side of your personality, it might be a little bit more draining because that's not what you're used to. But if you're that support person, it's the same. You're like, and you have to use the dominance, and it's like, this is exhausting for me. But you have to use all of them in order to be successful. And we need to know, it helps us know where our strengths and weaknesses are and what we can do well and areas that we grow. Everyone has room for growth.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, these are primarily tools for communication between individuals, yes, not necessarily ways to weed out who should be at the company.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it is just a way for managers and team members to be able to communicate with each other and understand their different personality styles. Once again, kind of bringing Chrissy and I into it together because I know ours very well. I have that individualistic predictive index. Chrissy is a collaborator, and she's very, very social oriented. She's very people oriented. She's very good at getting down to the personal levels. So when we communicate with each other, I am very much like, here's the metrics. Here's what we got to do. This is what we're going to hit. And then Chrissy's very much of, hey, but how is this going to affect everybody? You need to have those metrics, but you also have to have the human element into it. You can't base somebody off their metrics. You can't base somebody off of what a piece of paper says, because people are people. Mm-hmm. But you can utilize these tools to help communicate and build the communication styles. We're all very different, but once we learn how to communicate with each other and push away all the other stuff, that's what helps people grow. Communication is probably the most powerful tool of your professional life, your personal life. Like, it's the most important thing that people have. So utilizing things like DISC, predictive index, Enneagram, other personality tests, they're tools to help you be a better person, to be a better leader, to be a better communicator, and to help with the guidance. They're also better tools for the individual to say, okay, yeah, this is something that I would like to work on, or, yep, I recognize this in myself, and that's one of my strengths. It shouldn't be the end all be all by any means, because people are still people at their core. And just because on paper somebody might say, look like the most perfect thing for this position that you need, and then they're not. Or it might look at it and say, oh, these are none of the, personality traits I'm looking for, but they excel. Because this is just your interpersonal self and your work self that drives you. Mm-hmm. It's not who you are as a person as a whole.
But one thing I really like about it is, like, it's not cheesy, like I feel like the amount of awareness that it brings to the person, is incredible. I took one, before this, I did another one. I've done one like years ago, but I did one so that Stacy could psychoanalyze me, but it was really helpful to see, okay, like, I may be strong in these areas, but if you're strong in these areas, you may have to watch out for these things, So it kind of like brings a little bit of humility, like, not everything about your strengths is going to help. It can also hurt if you don't manage these in the right way. And then it really helps you like interpret what other people are saying to you, because if sort of like how they are, from just, I don't want to say, is it personality? It's just kind of like tendencies, what their tendencies are. Yeah. It really helps you sort of decipher what the real message is, and
Absolutely.
So you don't take people out
it's more behaviors and traits. Mm-hmm. So personality, your behaviors and traits can help develop your personality, but your personality is not all your behaviors and your traits. These are behaviors that you do. They're traits that you have. They're not you as a whole. So that's, where it's like you said, helps you understand like, oh, now I'm kind of seeing what someone said about this situation the other day. With, like yours, I think it said you had a high dominance. So
DC.
Yeah, high dominance, high conscientious level. Those are personalities where you're like, oh, I can make the decision, but you're also thinking about the effects in the long run of what's going to happen with that decision. And that's necessary for people to have. But there's also the flip side where you might be like, oh, okay, maybe I need to think about how do I inspire my team to be really involved with this process, or how do I get this idea that I have and make it be that, you know, people really want to like go with it as well and understand my point of view on it. So it's one of those things that can kind of help you look at yourself as a whole. Mine is very high dominance, very high influential. So when I think about things, sometimes I have to go back and be like, wait, I have this idea. What's the cause and effect of my idea? And that's when you go to someone like you, where I'm like, I have an idea. How's that gonna, you know,
help me think
it through?
Yeah.
And once you have those styles and you know those styles about your people, you also know those people that help you grow. I like to go and brain think with a lot of people because I know that our different traits and behaviors, we're going to think of different things. Working with Chrissy, working with Michelle Moore, working with Molly Ivanchek, working with Karina Nelson, all of our leaders, and saying, hey, here's this thing. Let's talk it out. And then you get all sorts of different point of views and you're like, okay, I didn't think about this as a whole. And you take those different strengths. When you look at a lot of companies, you'll see that their leadership levels will be, there's not going to be all dominance people. There's not going to be all influential. There's not going to be all support. You're going to see a nice mixture because you need that mixture as a whole. And it teaches you how to work together in that way. It teaches you that our differences don't really matter in the long run. It's differences. Mm-hmm. But if we have the same goal and the same end game, how can we work together to get there?
Mm-hmm. And deciphering the differences so that, you know, understanding one another is the ultimate goal. And I think that when you're trying to move forward and the friction comes from just lack of communication, like you said, and this is just a tool to help, you know, communicate.
Yes. And it's a tool to help you know how to communicate effectively. You can communicate all day long, but if you're not doing an effective communication, then it's just falling upon deaf ears. It's how do we effectively communicate with one another? How do we get points across so that it's clear and concise but also, you know, charitable and kind in the way that we speak to one another. If someone, you know, is yelling at you, they're communicating with you, but are you really listening to what they're saying when they're yelling at you? Mm-hmm. Usually not. So it's how do we get our points across and how do we collaborate together and actually effectively communicate and listen to one another.
Jaymi, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You were a great guest and certainly learned a lot about DISC. I was fearing that you would tell me that, you know, that I was just way out of whack with my DISC profile and I needed so much work. But, you know, I appreciate all your knowledge where that's concerned. And well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That was another episode of Relocation Leader. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks.